Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Up with Steph. Today, I've got a really interesting episode, and we talk about a bunch of stuff, but it's centered around minimally invasive dentistry, which I'm super curious about, and also public health. My guest today is Crystal Spring. She's a dental hygienist, and she's also the founder of a company called Smiles Across Montana, which is a nonprofit that serves thousands of patients across Montana. It always impresses me and amazes me what dental clinicians, what hygienists can do when they have a passion. And she created this business all by herself. I mean, granted, she's got a huge team now, but it's just, I admire her a lot. So, we talked today about what minimally invasive dentistry is. And it was funny during the episode, I shared a story when I was back in hygiene school. I went into hygiene school, I had no cavities, never had a cavity ever. And I was like 22 or 23 when I got into hygiene school. And then I got bite wings taken and I had all of these incipient lesions. And of course, me being the gun ho hygienist or hygiene student that I was, I wanted to get fillings on all of them because it freaked me out. And just looking back, I mean, these were tiny little lesions that were barely into the enamel. And I just wish we had options like what we talked about today, like SDF or a product called Curadont, because then I wouldn't have had to drill all of these virgin teeth that I have. So she explains to us how those products work and how she's using them in her public health business. And then we touched on workforce issues, how she's training community healthcare workers, dental assistants, even nurses to do different duties in her practice and screening patients, and also what her opinion is on training assistants to take over some of the hygiene duties that is a hot topic right now in dentistry. And with her experience in public health, I picked her brain on why it seems to be that we collectively, when I say we, I mean collectively in dentistry, seem to think it's okay to have a lower standard of care in public health. It's an ugly thing to say, and it's an ugly thing for it to be real, but it is. So she shares her opinions on that. And then we talk about medical dental integration, which is another thing that she's passionate about. Crystal is just a very kind, sweet, passionate person, and it was a really fun conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. On to today's conversation with Crystal. Hey, it's Steph, and welcome to the Straight Up with Steph podcast, where we have real discussions around health and life and just trying to be better at both. Hey, Crystal. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to see you. Thanks for joining today.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. I'm just so impressed with what you're doing, Steph. This is awesome.
Oh, well, likewise. And we're going to talk about what you've been up to. But I guess I want to start with public health because I know that's your company, Smiles Across Montana, and you talk a lot about minimally invasive care. So, how does that look like in your business or out there in public health?
Yeah, so minimally invasive care. So, I was just talking to a colleague, Johnny Norris, this last week, and we were talking about, are we going to keep calling it minimally invasive care, or are we just going to call it dentistry? Because it is dentistry. And so I've been using and learning about SDF since 2015. That's a really long time. That's 10 years now. At that time, I was working in public health. I was working up on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation. That's where I grew up. And that's where I learned about silver diamine fluoride. I ended up at this SDF symposium with Margarita, who has done all of the latest trials for a 10-year study. And they've just finished that now. Elevate helped with that. And that's where I met Jeremy Horst and so many amazing people. But what does SDF look like and minimally invasive care look like in public health for my team? So when I first started using SDF and glass ionomers, so glass ionomers, I also look at that as like a huge part of minimally invasive care because glass ionomers work different than any other material. They're essentially binding chemically and mechanically to the tooth. Doug Young has some amazing videos where he's taken a tooth where glass ionomer was in it and he couldn't even break it out with a hammer. So, I mean, it just became like part of the tooth. So what it looks like for us is how we started really using SDF and glass ionomers a lot we had no other choice. We would go into an area and there would be a small hole in someone's tooth, wait 3 months, come back in, it's even bigger, and just this huge progression. And so when I was working up at Fort Peck, we started using glass ionomers. So I had somebody from Indian Health Service show me how to use them. And I've never stopped using them. We would see kids' teeth exfoliate with glass ionomer in them rather than having to, these kids weren't going to the dentist. That's the other thing. We're like 300 miles, my hometown, from the nearest pediatric dental office. These kids weren't going anywhere. And so to be able to keep them out of pain, keep them in school, keep these cavities from growing, it was just amazing. And so for me, I feel so strongly about it because I've seen it work. I think a lot of times when clinicians hear about something, you go away to a course and you've never seen it work, it's harder to buy in. I actually got to attend, it was a study club that Dr. Facella out of Oregon put on, and he brought all these people in minimally invasive care together, and we worked with an FQHC for a weekend. And we actually went in the first day, they just learned all, it was lecture for a day. And then the second day we went in with the clinicians and we're like, hey, this would be a good opportunity to use SDF. And you wouldn't believe how many people, or glass ionomer, and you wouldn't believe how many people were just really struggling with it. So I think it is really difficult for some of us to pick up, especially if you go away to a conference and you learn about something, to just really buy in. But for me, I had no choice but to buy in. And we exclusively use glass ionomers, and we use a lot of SDF. We're using the new nano-fluoride from Young, and we're also using Curodont Repair. And there are a couple new ones. There's like a Crystal Bio that we're looking at using. Just anything that's going to help us not have to send someone to the dentist when they're not going to get there has really.
So, for those who maybe aren't familiar with what minimally invasive is, that's basically like not having to drill the tooth, right? Like treating caries without having to drill.
Yeah. So, like SDF and some of these nanofluorides, it's like penicillin. It's like penicillin was 100 years ago. We have this for teeth. So if you had an infection in your arm, you wouldn't like amputate your whole arm to, but that's what we've been doing to teeth forever. And, sometimes it feels discouraging, like not enough people know, but I don't know. I also feel like so many more people are talking about it right now. There's more companies selling that. There's more competition in the market, which I see all these things as good because it means that people are going to be using them.
And like, if we're talking about glass ionomer or SDF, or even the like nano fluoride that you mentioned, it's not just for kids, right? Like adults
No,
can have this too.
no, it's definitely for adults. So actually, that's what I had done to a tooth of mine. We did like a filling on my couch. Dr. Horst did it. It was so awesome. And I was like, no, I don't want to go out to the mobile vehicle. I want to do this on the couch. And it was awesome. But it was just, it shows you like how safe it is. And I wanted to say that that's what I did for myself as well.
Well, I just remember back when I was in hygiene school. Okay, this was a while ago, but when I was in hygiene school, I had never had any cavities, like none. And I got bite wings taken, of course, and I had all these incipient lesions in between my teeth, like tiny, like not barely into the enamel, definitely not even in the dentin yet. And I got them filled. And I'm just looking back, I'm like, God, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have just hit it with some fluoride varnish or something. I didn't know any better at the time. But then if we had these things like SDF or Curadont, I want to talk a little bit more about that because I don't know a whole lot about it. I could have prevented, getting my virgin teeth drilled on.
Oh, 100%. And just so you know, you're not the only person that did that. I actually took my x-rays to a dental office. One office said they wouldn't do it because they saw nothing there. And then I persisted. I was like, no, I've got cavities, and unfortunately had them all filled as well. And I think that's happened to almost everyone who's went to hygiene or dental school. You become crazy that way. But Curodont, we've been using Curodont, I think, for about 3 years now. We use a lot of it in our program. Curodont is the only product that actually remineralizes. And so Curodont is a little bit more expensive than some of the other things that we use. And they're changing the way they do things. So I don't want to talk about it too much because some of the things that I think are hard are going to be really, really easy when they roll out their new product in a couple months. So
is it like a fluoride based product, or like what is the general idea?
So it actually has a peptide, and it uses nanohydroxyapatite to it's going to help remineralize the tooth. It's, you're not thinking like a hole and it's just filling in a hole, but you're thinking of an area where maybe you have early caries or you have a white spot lesion, it actually starts at the base of the lesion and creates a scaffolding that just hardens the tooth and remineralizes it. You can see it on x-rays, and it's really, really easy to apply. I think some of the harder parts for us with really young children were, you do have to etch, and we don't have to etch with some of the other products we use. So, but no staining with Curodont. I love that. And it really works. I love Curodont. We use it all the time. I just can't say enough good things about it, especially the whole idea that it doesn't stain. We've had a couple of times when protocol has been broken or SDF has gotten on front teeth in our program, and that is a huge problem. You know,
Yeah, like tell us about the staining.
so SDF, when it works, that's what it does. So our protocols say if it's already dark, we take a lot of intraorals, a lot of before and afters because we don't have parents at a lot of our appointments. But it will stain. If it's an actual cavity, it'll stain it darker. If it's just an area where you have recession and there's no, it's not active caries, it's not going to stain that. But you're taking a risk, especially around brackets and things like that. So we only use it in back teeth for the most part, and
Okay.
especially areas where it's already dark, that's just easier. And up until recently, we would use Curodont everywhere else. Now we're kind of using Young's nano-fluoride in a lot of the areas more anterior, especially like for something that's an actual cavitation, because that's not what Curodont's recommended for, is not like actual holes in teeth, but early caries, if that makes sense.
And if something is cavitated or if there's a hole in the tooth, that's what SDF is better for. And then Curodont is maybe
So
better for demon.
SDF is great for everything.
Okay.
I just, so for instance, my younger son, I mean, he whitens his teeth all the time. Kids used to call him like the kid with the really white teeth. I was like, oh, that's super embarrassing because I know somebody's over whitening. But yeah, a lot of times, like in someone's mouth where there's not one spot in there, or for anyone, if it's not dark already, we don't really want to cause that, especially if they're
Okay.
not going to be able to get it filled. But if it is like an occlusal surface and it's not dark, we could put that on there, and then we'll just put glass ionomer over it. We've covered it up. It's totally fine. You're not going to see it. But if it was a facial surface or a buccal surface, I would probably use Curodont if it was an actual hole in the tooth or cavitation. And then I would now also think about using the nanofluoride as well.
And I'm not familiar with the nano-fluoride.
So Young just came out with a nanofluoride, and we've been using that since, I believe, we started using it a lot after our March clinic. We had a big clinic here, and Dr. Horst was here, and it was just this amazing time, and we got to unveil a bunch of new products, and it was really awesome. So the nanofluoride works pretty much the same way that SDF does. But we are finding if it's like a really deep, aggressive cavity, that SDF is working a little better. But
Mm.
so I've used nanofluoride on a couple areas that I have as sensitivities because I don't want to have really dark staining in some of these areas. So I'm thinking the nanofluoride, they're still figuring out so much about it, but I think you're going to have to apply it more times than SDF. SDF is, from what I've seen, a little bit stronger. And I think Dr. Keeper was talking about that recently. So
I mean, how cool is it that we have all these different options now that do not require a drill?
I am just blown away, especially I worked direct access for years, and I had, my patients were never going to see a dentist. I had no choice. And I think it's really hard for people when they're thinking about like restrictions. So, what we can't do ITRs in Montana with our direct access dental hygienists. So that's kind of
Mm.
a bummer, right? Because there's tons of patients who need an ITR. So you have to you can't do any, scoop out of the tooth, which is really, really unfortunate. So there's also a product called Papakari Duo, and another product. They've had something like this in Canada. A company has, it's made out of papain. And what it does is like the reverse of SDF. So essentially you put it on a tooth for like a minute, and it actually turns the cavity kind of into mush. And instead of having to drill something out, you can literally either scrape or wipe it away. So that's,
Mm.
I mean, Unbelievable. I was a little scared to use that because I'm like, oh, wow. So if it's a small cavity, now you're really making it mushy, but that's not really how it works. And then you're able to use SDF on top of that or one of the other fluorides and then cover it up with a glass ionomer. Just
Wow.
unbelievable.
Are there like moves? I don't know if you know this, but where you're at, are there moves to allow hygienists to do ITR?
So it's funny that you say that. I emailed like 40 people today asking like, how do we do this? Because
Yeah.
essentially you're doing pretty much the same thing. You're just not able to be reimbursed for it. We're not doing anything, that is irreversible to a tooth. We're just helping these people cover up big holes in their mouth that they're never going to have filled. We do have dentists with our team a lot, and so we are a little different. We're not direct access. We do have that in Montana, but that's not how our providers work. I really believe in teamwork, and my whole team, we're just really comfortable with our model of every patient sees a dentist, the dentists look at the charts, and that's what works for us.
Well, I applaud you for that model because honestly, with everything going on in dentistry right now, it's crazy, but we all have our lane, right? Like assistants, dentists, hygienists, and our patients need all of us. Like there's not one person that's going to be the hero that can do everything. So I mean, I agree with what you just said.
No, and for us too, it's just my hygienists sleep better at night. If we had to refer out for every single consult, every referral, it would be really, really hard. And we have some amazing dentists that help us out. We try to
Yeah.
pick dentists that are doing things in our communities. But yeah, my whole team really likes the way our model is set up. And to be honest, right now, the way that we're reimbursed, if we were direct access or it's called a limited access permit hygienist, there's a lot of things that we do that we wouldn't be able to get paid for because these payment models are so just archaic. It's like a
Yeah.
hygienist can do this service, but you can't get paid for it. And I've known the hygienists with the Montana Dental Hygiene Association, who have laid down their souls to make this stuff happen. And I always want to be really careful and thankful for what they've done, but not push anything too far that things get taken away.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it is kind of like a dance. It'll be interesting to see just with everything that's happening in dentistry, if these outdated payment models are actually going to change. And then some of these practice acts too that are just so far behind the times.
It's unbelievable, right? To think like in Montana, we're really lucky, but I think our dental association is really smart. It's under general supervision. So actually we're under general supervision, not direct supervision, because that would mean the dentist had to be right there. We're just under general supervision, but we can do general supervision, local anesthesia, which that's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah.
So I loved the dentist that I worked for in town, but man, he would show up for work late every day and the entire office would be just waiting for him to walk through the door. You'd have people soaking with benzocaine, just getting ready.
For like
And
20 minutes.
you know, I'd like to say 20 minutes. Sometimes it was longer. Great
Oh
guy,
man.
though.
Yeah.
Just really not the best at time management. So
Yeah. Well, can't have everything, I guess. So when like dentistry, I think when it comes to these newer things like Curadont or even SDF, although that's not like new, but it seems new. Dentistry, I think, is kind of slow to make these changes. Do you think that public health is a bit quicker to jump on the bandwagon with these things than like private practice?
I think because hygienists, that was the only tool that we did have, I can say that that really did help. I think that public health in general is just faster acting. Like public health
Mhm.
measures at work are usually really large and really quick coming at you. And so I think that general dentistry and the rest of dentistry can learn so much from public health. I think some of the boundaries are right now, or the things that are really just keeping it from being utilized as much, is our payment models.
Yeah.
A lot of times Curodont's not paid for because there is a different code for Curodont than there is for SDF. You can use the SDF code, but a lot of insurances don't pay for it. And, you know, it is important. I feel like dentists get a bad rap about being greedy, but they have to make money. We have to,
Yes. Yeah.
so we're not set up to even pay people for some of these services. And so it really is keeping it from being brought in. I will say something I was really proud of. because we haven't had a lot of people who work in general practice come and work with our program. But Erin Hitz came out a couple of years ago, and she's a pretty phenomenal dental hygienist. And she started using SDF with our program, and she actually implemented it into a pretty high end, I would say more bougie than what we do clinic. And they've been using it ever since. They use that and Curadont. I was really
Wow.
impressed. She said if somebody had a watch, and that really upped her production in her office too. So that was great for her. That was great for her patients. And contrary to what people think, dentists aren't just excited and waiting for your, tooth to be even, more diseased the next time you come in. They're not just waiting for that. So they've been able to eliminate a lot of that. And then your patients are happy and they trust you. So she's built a lot of trust with that. So I always like to tell that story because it was fun watching people, because I do believe with SDF, sometimes you have to see it to believe it.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying if you came in and worked with us for an afternoon and we placed SDF and then it would be hard in the afternoon. I'm not saying that, but you can see the color change a lot. Like light makes it change quicker. Actually, there's a couple studies. I was surprised because I was always afraid of people getting light on the SDF and it infiltrating too quick, and maybe the efficacy wouldn't be as great, but that's not the case. So you can shine a light, and there's a couple studies that say that it goes even deeper faster. So that was awesome.
Oh,
But you can see the color change right away on some of these teeth. And that's like, okay, seeing's believing there. And then you can see someone later in the day who had SDF placed like weeks ago, months ago, and you can actually feel what is a hole, and you can tap on it with a probe and it's hard.
oh, that's crazy.
That's what you're seeing. Or we have a lot of before and after pictures of like Curodont. So you see these really white spot lesions, and they're barely noticeable the next time. Or just what you see on x-rays, it's unbelievable.
Hmm.
And it's
That's
supposed to
awesome.
just be in the enamel, but you can see some of it in the dentin as well. It does work. Does
Well,
it work
hopefully
if it's
more.
bathed in like just sugar constantly? Probably not.
Yeah.
We do have areas where SDF doesn't work, the nanofluoride doesn't work, nothing works. It's because they're just constantly bathed in acid. So,
Well, yeah, that's not really going to
yeah.
help. So, I want to talk to you about some of the workforce issues. And we've tried to chatted a little bit about that, but you have trained nurses and dental assistants and community healthcare workers, right? So, what are you training them in and how has that gone?
Yeah. So I've been working with Montana State University, the Mark and Robin Jones Nursing Department at MSU for, I think, since 2018. So I met Dr. Larson at the SDF symposium in Hood River, and she lives in my hometown. And ever since that date, we've been talking about SDF and what it could do for our patients. They've created some good health TV that are TV programs that play in some of the FQHCs around the state and in Indian Health Service. And they had a grant. They had, I believe it was a big HRSA grant, where they were needing someone to come in and work alongside them. So essentially, with our program and what we do, I'll go in and I'll teach either the nurse practitioner students or the first and second year nursing students about SDF, about using intraoral cameras, about oral health disease. Like, it's always amazing, like what they don't know, because they
Yeah.
don't learn a lot about teeth or oral health at all. Usually if you think about going to the doctor, they're looking straight to the back of your throat. They're missing all of this. And I'll tell stories and show them visually, have them doing their exams on each other with an intraoral camera, which is amazing because that's just a game changer if you're using a light pen. Like, light pens are so silly, or like just them even being able to think in millimeters the way we do. Our
Hmm.
brains are just trained towards millimeters. And maybe I shouldn't speak for them, but I don't think theirs are. They're like, it's
Yeah.
about this big. And that's been really fun, is watching it progress for them and watching them see what we're doing. That a lot of people, and unfortunately, it is in every single clinic we're in, we see kids, because we are in areas where kids aren't going to the dentist. Hands down, you couldn't come to one of our clinics and not see a kid or an adult a lot of times with holes in their teeth, large holes. And them seeing this and actually being like, wow, there's something I can do to help it. and even teaching people how to brush their teeth correctly. I think that's really important. So the nursing student part of it has been really, really fun. I've had a couple of people come at me like, why would you teach nurses to do our jobs? I'm like, no, our job is so much more than that. But,
Yeah.
back off. We'll never have enough dental providers. So I think across the nation, there's just health provider shortage areas across the nation. And no one can dispute that. We'll never have enough healthcare providers or dental providers. So integrating medical and dental is not only going to help, but it's just essential. You have to do it. And then as far as training community healthcare workers and assistants, so us being all over the state, a lot of times we don't have a dental hygienist or a dentist in that area. And we
Mhm.
want to have a connection to different areas of the state. It really does help. So we started out with community healthcare workers in the Baker, so like Southwest or Southeast Montana and Northwest Montana. And so,
So first off, just real quick, like, can you define what a community healthcare
yeah,
worker
yeah.
is? Okay.
So a community healthcare worker, and what it is to us is we hired people from the community, maybe a stay-at-home mom or someone who didn't have a job prior to that and was looking for work and had never worked in dental or healthcare. So essentially somebody, when we talk about hiring somebody straight off the street, we got them from a school system or something like that. But I more look for people who actually care about people and are inspired than already have skills, because we
Well, you
know,
can't
like,
teach that.
no,
Like, you
no,
can
you
teach
can't teach
skills, but
that.
you can't teach someone how to care about someone else?
Unfortunately, that is so true.
Yeah.
So we actually enroll them. So it's called the Community Healthcare Worker Education. I know that the ADA actually has a community dental care worker. I can't remember what their acronym is, but they also have a model, and we've taken some things from that as well. But we enroll all of our people who come on in. We were able to get a grant for this, and it pays for them. I think it's like 8 weeks of online training, and then there's some testing that they do and presentations. And then we're even going beyond that with them. And then when they're in clinic with us, they're learning how to use the intraoral cameras. They're not taking x-rays because I would have to have them certified, but they are looking at going to classes for that. So they're not there just to be like an assistant to the hygienist and dentist, but they will assist. Eventually we'll have them do their radiation testing, but some of this other stuff is way more important. So they learn about HIPAA, because a lot of times when people are bringing people into their office, if they're not trained the way we were as dental hygienists, they don't know that you can't repeat or talk about people in the
Mm,
office. Like it's
yeah.
pretty crazy if you ask me. But we enroll them in this community healthcare worker training, and then we train them as pretty much dental assistants, like hygiene dental assistants, but we do have dentists work with us. So they kind of learn a little bit of everything. And then they are this liaison to the community. So part of this, we have a grant through CareQuest that made it this dream kind of a reality, because I'm like, okay, how do we build a rapport in a community we don't live in? And so you're taking someone who is from the community. So let's essentially say, like, we have people up in the Blackfeet, on the Blackfeet reservation is where one of our community healthcare workers is from. And that even just helps to break down so many barriers to call people. I like to use the school phones when we're calling people, because they're getting a call from a number that they know and trust. And it's amazing how much easier it is for people to actually talk to you. I do want to talk about something that I think it wasn't really on our list, but if we could, we've actually
Yeah.
added in behavioral health into our program, because we have
Okay.
such a high suicide rate in Montana that our providers are having to ask really hard questions. We see kids with, maybe 6 months ago, they were really brushing well. And I've always said, I don't want to be scolding anyone. I mean, we're just here to love on people and help them make changes, empower them to advocate for themselves and their own healthcare. But what we're finding a lot of times is, you might see a kid and they've just got so much plaque that you don't even know what to do. You're going to have to go in there and brush it off, then polish it off, just to be able to see the teeth. And, before we just assume that they're lazy or, they're just not brushing, maybe whispering to them like, hey, do you have a toothbrush? It can be that hard for some people. And I've seen that this isn't just in areas of, poverty. A lot of kids they stay at this person's house and then this person's house, and they might have forgot their toothbrush when they moved, or somebody else took their toothbrush or used their toothbrush, or just don't even have the basic dental knowledge to know that that's not safe or healthy to be using someone else's toothbrush. And the other times when we see people really fail with their oral hygiene is through depression. And unfortunately, we see a lot of kids going through a lot of stuff in our program. So we
God,
started.
that is something we take for granted, like just a toothbrush. Like, and I know myself, I've been guilty in the past of just jumping to like this kid's lazy, like they're just coming in expecting me to clean everything off, just whatever. But it's like, have I ever stopped to think what's actually going on with them, or if they actually have a clean toothbrush to use? Like, not all the time.
No, I mean, think about it, because it's not even, socioeconomic. It's, they might be staying at grandma's house and, staying tons of different places. You just don't know.
Yeah, and until you ask, right? God, that makes me so sad. So you're obviously like you're open to training others, right? And doing some of the things. So I'm just curious what your opinion is on assistants being trained to, like, for example, do hygiene duties, because that's something that's just causing a bunch of drama
Oh,
right
and it
now.
is causing some drama. And unfortunately, like, I don't even think it matters what my opinion is. It's going to happen.
Yep,
They are
it is
not going
happening.
to be hygienists, though. If you think about a hygienist and everything we know, and like, I mean, just our ability to critical think, it's amazing. Think about how hard it is, first of all, to get into dental hygiene school. My goodness, right? Like, you had
Yeah.
to have all A's. I think I had a couple B's in something, and I was like one of the last people to get into a program. Like, that's
I
unbelievable.
got a B. I had a B my first time applying and I got rejected. I think it was because of that B. And then I retook the class and then I got in the second year. Like, that's how competitive it
It
was.
is. And yeah, I went to school with people. I was at Montana State, and I was graded on a curve with kids going to dental school and med school. And yeah, it was really difficult. So I think that we really can't compare what an actual hygienist would do. Are they
Mhm.
going to be scraping on teeth, if that's what we're going to call it? They already are. So
Yeah.
think about it. Most pediatric offices, I believe there's some where they hire hygienists, a lot where they don't. I think the really important part is that we come up with some curriculum that is good enough, that is safe enough. Because I've also I had an experience, and we've seen this a lot, where kids will have just been somewhere, and I mean, they've just had their whole mouth hacked on. So, like, I
Mhm.
really do think that it's important that we do get them the right training, and somebody's going to have to do it. Would I hire people to do that? If I were to tell you how much work we can't get done, possibly. We're not at that stage right now. Right now, it's only the hygienist scaling because that's all that's legal, obviously. But would I do that? Yeah, if they were trained correctly, because our hygienists do so much more. And our model, the way we work, and I was just a dicoma, and I love so much about DSOs, and I feel like they get the wrong rap, but these aren't the groups that are fighting against each other. If you're working in an FQHC, or if you're working, in a big DSO, the hygienists and the dentists, they're more teammates than adversaries, because they're not so concerned about who can do what and work for themselves. So I believe that there's the motivation for that always makes me sad. I do think there's going to be a lot of uproar, unfortunately. And, I know that something I saw that was really hard for me is that, teacher Tina, who's just this amazing human, she actually taught the first class of Oregon dental assistants to be able to administer local anesthesia. Let's be real, people. She didn't pass that law. But
Yeah.
who would you rather have teaching them? That girl has high standards. She's an amazing human. And like, I was one of the first people to call her that night. She put out a post saying something about it. And I mean, just as her friend, I was getting like teared up. I was just like, I was take it down, stop it, because like people wouldn't stop resharing it and calling her names. And we have to
I
be
know.
bigger than that. She didn't do this.
Yeah, I know. I know what post you're talking about. I saw the comments that started coming in, and she's a friend of mine too, and she is an amazing person. And I don't do this a lot, but I put up a post in her defense, and it's like you might not agree with it, just like what you said, Crystal. She didn't pass the law, but who else could teach her? And that's kind of like, or teach them. But that's kind of what I'm thinking with this whole assistant thing is this black and white, like this is what hygienists do, period. Like we're not going to let anyone else in. I don't think is the way of the future type thinking. And it is going to happen. It already is happening. And who else better to teach them than hygienists? Can't we make sure at least that hygienists are the ones teaching them how to do this? Even if we are still on the fence on if we support it or not.
Yeah, I mean, we are the prevention experts. We are, I mean, who teaches your courses? Who teaches, like we have Dr. Joy teaching and Amanda Hill and all these
Hmm.
amazing people out there teaching people, how to scale. That's who I'd want teaching it. And I would hope that they wouldn't be afraid to do it when the time comes because of that kind of backlash. So
Yeah. And
going back
and
to that,
dentists like, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I would, when laws are passed, they'll be passed for the right reasons, hopefully. And there's just so many. I think, what is it, like only 60% of Americans, 50 or 60% of Americans even go to the dentist each year. And I think it's even lower for that, like go regularly. So
Jeez.
there's just so many people walking around with so much disease. And if COVID taught us anything, it is that oral health care is essential. So if it's so essential, we have to have access for everyone. And what you're seeing right now is, when we talk about dental hygiene shortages, like I don't think there was so many hygienists that just said, I never want to be a hygienist again. I think that more people started wanting to go to the dentist because they're like, holy crap, this is important.
Yeah. And it's like our goal in dentistry would be 100% of people coming into the dentist regularly. We don't have the workforce right now to support
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, not at
So
all.
we got to think like outside the box a little bit, even if it's uncomfortable for some of us. Like I even get uncomfortable when I think about it, but if we put guardrails in place and really, train people properly, like maybe it could work. I don't know.
Yeah, or I think we think of it as the assistants against the hygienist, and that's not how I see it. Like when you have this
Yeah.
teamwork model, it's like wow. Like there are states that assistants can't place SDF and they can't place sealants at all. Like that's crazy, especially when you're talking about glass ionomers. You're just like it's not technique specific at all. Like seriously, you could grab the mom's finger and have her place it. It's that easy. And now you're telling me that it's not safe for. So SDF in Montana, we had to fight to be able to apply that. It was like, oh, the hygienist will be putting it in the patient's eyes. I'm like, oh yeah, because I do that with a local anesthesia. And these were just a couple individuals who didn't want things, but still, like that's the kind of backlash. I just don't want to see us as hygienists be seen in that same way because we've been restricted for so long
Yeah.
that we just don't want to restrict also. I know that it might seem like the right thing to do, but I think we should be fighting to do more. Like, why can't we do these ITRs in Montana? Why can't we be doing, like, I look at practices like Washington and like, I'm just blown away by what hygienists in Washington can do. They can do restorative. Like how,
Yeah.
like we could be so helpful. We could, I don't know. That's what I'd like to see instead of just worrying about who's scaling what.
I know it does seem like a turf war sometimes, but I know something else you're passionate about is medical dental integration. And I'm like, if we could free ourselves up a little bit with some of our duties, we could maybe focus on that. So I know this is something you probably you know way more about this than me, but what things could we be screening for besides like cavities and perio?
I think this is really important. I mean, you look at like dental hygiene scope of practice or just what we're supposed to be doing in a visit. I've known so many hygienists, over the years, like, oh, we don't take blood pressures. My doctor won't let me. Well, first of all, maybe their equipment sucks or you can't get a reading on something, but I've never seen a dentist tell somebody they can't do it and they just don't give
Yeah.
them the time to do it. But that's where the whole teamwork part comes into it. You're
Well,
screening
it
for
takes like 2 seconds. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Like,
I
yeah.
know, but so do oral cancer screenings and how important are those? Like Susan
Yeah,
Cotton,
right.
like, oh my gosh, like we're also, dentistry is so lucky to have her. And I feel bad for anyone else who teaches because that's all I know is the cotton method.
No, she's amazing.
Such an amazing human, but screening for oral cancer, screening for hypertension. We have a lot of our pregnant patients who don't even know that you can have a low birth term baby from having chronic gingivitis. So we deal with a lot of diabetes in our program. So when you look at studies, American Indians have twice the chance of getting diabetes as your average white male. So, like
Okay.
twice, I think it's like 14.3% or something like that. It's double. And when you're looking at something like that, we're not afraid to talk to our patients because kids know about diabetes in these small towns. Because guess what? You can't have dialysis in a small town. You have to go to a bigger hospital. If you know someone who has to have dialysis, and they live in a small town, they get on the bus on Tuesday morning, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, drive a few hundred miles, sit there all day, drive home that night, and then have to go and do that one more time that week. So it
Jeez.
really is a big deal, bigger than you could ever imagine. And so if you're not screening for inflammation and talking to your patients and finding out. So I'm not a big fan of A1Cs. So we're always like, oh, look at their A1Cs. And that is a point of care. You can do that in your office. But I love the continuous blood glucose monitors. That's where it's at. When you see
I
these
just wish they
spikes.
weren't so expensive.
And they are. And my brother is intellectually disabled and type 1 diabetic. So, like, I
Okay.
can see his readings anytime. I can just get on this app on my phone. But an A1C is not going to tell me anything. My brother's A1Cs are perfect. And
Mm,
he'll be so low in the morning, so high in the afternoon. We're talking like the 4 or 500s, and then down below 100, like 72 and things like that. So his A1C is coming back perfect to me. I just call that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So
yeah.
I'm not like a huge fan of A1Cs. And I know that a lot of programs would still tell me that's what we're doing. And I don't really agree with that. But yeah, screening for that, really spending more time educating your patients because you do have to find out what motivates them to improve their own health.
Well, it's interesting because so many of us are so focused on like deplacking or getting all of the calculus out of there or whatever. And yes, that is important. But if we don't have time to educate our patients, like it doesn't freaking matter because they're going
Oh,
to come in the next time and look like that again. And so we have to carve out some time to educate. And so many people, just hygienists, I know they want to, they don't have time.
and I
And
know
that
sometimes
goes
when
back
you're
to
trying
these
to build
outdated payment
a
models.
rapport with someone, it's easier to be like, oh, how are your kids? Especially when you don't think anyone wants to learn, but they've actually paid for that service. They
Yeah.
deserve to know. We actually screen for airway. I've learned a lot from some of my friends. And so we really don't have a lot of places to refer them to in Montana, but we're still telling the parents because they deserve to know, like, hey, we do tonsil scores and Malampati scores. We do all of this stuff. So if they could be cared for better somewhere else, that's where I want them to go. So we're always innovating. I think that for me, it's always been really important to be above reproach. I had so many people when I first started this just coming at me, and I started with a hygienist named Kara Breck. We started this together, and man, those first couple of years, those were horrible. Anywhere we went, like I've had a complaint against my license. It was completely bogus, but I've had one. I don't know how many hygienists have had that, but I will tell you that was one of the crappiest things that's ever happened to me. I've
Yeah.
lost loved ones, and, that made sense. Life goes on, but to me, like having people just make up lies about you and, come after your program was really, really hard. So I don't know. I just think being above reproach, doing it bigger and better all the time. I'll ask people, what do you not like about our program? What can I change? And I had one person pound on the table and tell me I should have never started it. And I was like, well, that's not really an option, but what else? What else you got?
But okay. Yeah. God, it takes so much like grit and fortitude just to keep going with that kind of stuff.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It's hard not to. Sometimes I feel like I've come so far. I'm older. I've learned so much. I've had so many amazing dentists come alongside and be supportive. Sometimes I do go back to that, like scared, like me against them. And I have to really just talk myself out of it.
Yeah, it's like that emotion. It's like I feel like sometimes I'm just constantly fighting my emotions and it's like try to stay in logic, because that'll always guide you the right way.
Yeah.
But how it with your like passion on medical dental integration, has anything changed with how you do things based on working with nurses?
Well, I think some of the information that we have about our patients is better. Like when the nursing students are there, it's really amazing because, well, actually, we're just doing things so much quicker. Sometimes they'll help us with the intraoral images. But of course, our hygienists, and I'm the same way, like no one's going to take as great of pictures as them, but at least
Yeah.
some of the education's been done. I've always looked at our program, so I can't really think of what we've done more of having them with us. I just like that they're doing a lot of it for us and getting a lot of the information, their heights, their weights, they're finding out who's pre-diabetic. I think sometimes you can kind of tell, weight is a huge one, but like chronic inflammation in their gums, for me, it's more of showing them what they can do
Mhm.
just looking in someone's mouth. And not just looking, like I tell them, like you have to palpate, you can feel things. So when we first started, we were a little nervous to take x-rays around stainless steel crowns because they've just been in, but when were they in? And what we'd started finding, I was doing an extraoral exam on a child, and I was coming around in the vestibule and my whole like finger just slipped in. We took an x-ray and all the bone was gone. Like these stainless steel crowns on a 5-year-old were just floating in there. I mean, and
Oh
we had
my
to,
God.
we had no clue. No one would have ever known that. So this child obviously went through a time of extreme inflammation and probably fistulas draining and a million things. And to be able to show that to nursing students and have them seeing like, this is why it's important. Or when they are looking at someone's A1C levels or their blood glucose monitors, when you're looking in their mouth, like the first thing you should think of is usually a UTI. The second is chronic inflammation in their mouths.
Mm.
So they really need to be aware of that. They're trying to combat things just with nutrition and, exercise, but this chronic inflammation in your mouth is really not helping at all.
God, and like it's just crazy to me because I know the ripple effect with these things. And like, yes, you're teaching this one nurse or couple nurses, but they've got friends also that are in
Yep.
medicine, right? And they're probably sharing what they're learning with you, and it's just kind of like branching out from there. So that's really cool.
The most exciting part is the nurse practitioners because they're working direct access themselves. They can make their own decisions. And that's
Hmm.
awesome. To me, I'm always like, well, you can use the camera. Like, why would you refer somebody off without taking a picture and like sending it off to the doctor? That just makes no sense to me. You could save so much time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I do have a couple other questions for you, just more related on like public health. I remember when the OPA position or initiative or whatever was first brought up, and I was looking at the verbiage, I guess, in that, and it was like the assistant would have to, I think the first 5 years of them becoming an OPA, they would work in a public health setting first. So that made me think like what they think that public health, it's okay to have, I'm going to say quote unquote lower standards. Like, is that something that you're used to hearing? Like, why is that a thing?
I hate that. So like that's always
Yeah.
been the thing that I've been fighting off because we get that. And I told you like how we do things. Like
Mhm.
we've never just went in with a scaler and a spit cup. We come in, we bring the entire dental office. Like our setups cost so much money. We have piezos, we have cavitrons. We're using everything we can be using. Anything a hygienist has in an office, we have with us and we bring that
And more.
everywhere. Yeah, I would say and more. But is this true 100%? So if you look at how things have been allowed to be done for years, so how I was able to do some of the work that I did at the Fort Peck Reservation is because standards were lowered because these people are going to get no care if we don't go there. So unfortunately, it's 100% true. But I will say, and I say this all the time, the standard of care is only as subpar as the provider that is providing that care. There's no way that I would go in and do like bloody prophies we do have to do a lot of full mouth debridements. We have to decide like, hey, something is better than nothing. We have to work with people in that way. We might not be able to hold to the same standard, but a lot of times you have to do that in an office as well.
Right.
So I feel that it's really unfair. And I feel like I'm going to speak towards like my family that's Native American. I think that it's really unfair, because when your healthcare system is one that's your healthcare, that's really unfair. Like, why do they deserve like an assistant who didn't go to school to be scaling on them? It's just wrong. But does it work in some cases? I'm not sure. I do know that one assistant that I'm friends with who was essentially trained as an EFTA, even though we don't have them really in Montana through Indian Health Service. She's amazing. I would love to see her be a hygienist. I will say there were some things in that whole bill that I hate the way it's either black or white, win or lose, because we do need to change things. We need to change things with CODA. For instance, one of my first cousins, she wants to go to dental hygiene school. She lives in northeastern Montana on the reservation. In order for her to go to hygiene school, she's going to have to move 6 hours at the very away from her family. She's married. She has 3 kids. We don't have people in these areas. So there were things in there like remote learning. We should have remote learning. We do need remote learning. Why do we all have to be sitting in there in that classroom? Regular college courses that we take now, everyone else has remote learning, but that's not how dental hygiene is. We have to be there. Why can't our clinics be centered? You're going to have 2 weeks straight of clinic. It's going to be hell, but you're going to do 2 weeks straight. We won't see you for another couple months. Why aren't they
Yeah.
doing things like that? There were things hidden in bills like that we're missing out on. And I'm really upset about that because I don't know if my cousin will ever be able to leave. You're asking your husband to leave his job. And if you don't, like, how's that going to work out? It's really not okay.
And having kids too, like I can't even imagine.
Taking them
Yeah.
away from their grandparents and, some communities, it's just really strong. And that part made me sad.
So what do you think a solution is? Is that like what you said, kind of just maybe rethinking how we've done things? And just because we've done things a certain way for forever doesn't mean we have to keep doing it
Yeah, if
like
you
that.
think about like how, like, even, and some people have probably, I'm not in education, but I think some of it was overkill. Come on, I feel some of what we had to do
When
in
we were in
clinic.
school?
Yeah, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
dentists take like 2 weeks. I don't know how long. I'm not going to speak to that, but they don't learn as much about periodontal scaling or any of that. That's why they treat us like we're the prevention experts, because we are. I'm
Right.
not saying that we need less, but maybe not as much, so I guess that is saying that. But I think that some of the standards will have to change. Does that mean they're going to be less knowledgeable? I think like the way we have to be tested to move into new states is just the biggest
And
BS I've ever
it's so
seen.
dumb.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. It's so breaking down barriers like that, it's going to help a lot. I think that, again, I think it's really important for hygienists to be part of their association and to understand what some of the things that they're doing and why they matter, but also being open to how are we going to solve this problem? What are we going to bring to the table? Like, what could be done? And I love the idea of the remote learning. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but maybe even I remember being in dental hygiene school and we had so much public health. We'd go to the VA and work these amazing experiences with maybe just adjunct faculty. Like, let's think outside the box and let's get more providers out there. I know that dentistry in general, so we don't have DSOs really in Montana, and our associations voted against that or had people vote against it this last time. And I'm hoping that changes because we don't have a lot to drive down the cost of dentistry in Montana either. We have certain insurances that, bigger or smaller offices aren't able to take. I mean, I think dentistry has to stop feeding on itself and fighting against
Yeah.
itself is what I believe. And I probably inadvertently made a few people mad saying that, but we really do have to not just be thinking about ourselves when we're voting against things. We have to be thinking about what about the people who need it? When you're talking about direct access hygienists. So maybe I don't work as a direct access dental hygienist right now, but I have so many friends that do work in nursing facilities who do. And I'm going to support them because they're the only people going in there. No one else is going in there. I think that you don't have to do all these things, but you need to not stand in the way, and you should be supporting through your membership.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, especially just about being open. Like I always think of Amanda Hill because she's the first one that it really stuck with me when she was like, be curious, like always be curious. And so now it's like, if I think I know something, like my way is the highway, I'm like, okay, wait, be curious about this. Like how else could we look at this? And I think that we in dentistry need to do that. Like
We
we've got
do.
systems that aren't working and we're going to have to make some changes. And just be curious. What could that look like?
And I think too, with the upheaval and just how hard things are, like these hygienists still have to go back and work with the dentist.
Hmm.
We're still teammates.
Yeah.
I know you work for Dr. Kessler. What a great guy. Like, I mean, he's a
Yeah.
great human. Is he the president of the ADA? Yes, he is. But they're still people. And just
Right.
because people think a little differently than you do, I think I've learned so much that I don't win when I come in screaming and
Mm-mm.
angry. You have to listen. You have to think about, okay, what else? And unfortunately, as hygienists, we are coming from a harder spot. I feel like we're the underdog. So what are we going to do to lift ourselves? I think be the
Yeah.
best hygienist we can be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I mean, I think a lot of dentists that are against dental therapy too, we need it. Eventually, what will happen is the public will say we need it. I think the same thing with minimally invasive care. We were talking about that. How do you get the word out? So you have so many people who do it, but I've had groups come to us because they're like, our dentist doesn't do minimally invasive care. We want healing over drilling. Like, where do I get this? And so it's going to be what people know also.
Yeah, getting it out on social media and educating our patients, because they will drive they if we have enough patients that are asking for SDF or asking for, minimally invasive care, like dentists, not just dentists, but dental clinicians are going to be forced to
Yeah.
start offering that, which
Yeah.
is good. It's in their best
And it's
interest.
great, and there are ways to make money
Yeah.
using these materials. I mean, my goodness, it's so quick. You could see so many more patients. So I know that Johnny Norris, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a
Mm-mm.
pediatric dentist out of New Hampshire. I think he has like 26,000 patients under him. And of those 26,000 patients in a pediatric practice, he only did 11 surgeries last year. And his model is boom, 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 quick. But I mean, think about that. They're still doing great. They're probably happier because you can't tell me. I mean, dentists are awesome humans also. They didn't go into it to be having kids be miserable. Sedation, I wouldn't do it for my kids. I don't think it's safe. The ADA
Yeah.
came out with a study a couple years ago that 1 in 12 has an adverse effect. Like, that's one
Jeez.
too many.
That's way too high. Yeah. Man. Well, Crystal, thank you so much for all of your time today. I feel like I could talk to you for a lot longer, but if people want to reach out to you or learn more from you, where's the best place for that?
Definitely. So they can go to our website. It's smilesacrossmontana.com. They can reach out to me. It's Crystal at smilesacrossmontana.com. And, if they ever want to come and watch what we do or participate, you can get a volunteer license in the state of Montana. It's a great way. We actually have another clinic that's centered around behavioral health and suicide that's going to happen next spring, March 28th and 29th during there's a huge Native American powwow here in Bozeman, and we're putting on another big event at that time. People can come and volunteer, and yeah, I would love to see all my friends come. So
Oh my gosh, Crystal, I know you gave me some kind words at the beginning of the podcast, and I just want to say the same to you. I think what you've created and what you're doing is amazing. And it really just blows my mind to see what hygienists or even what dental clinicians can do, when they have a passion for it. So I admire you a lot.
thank you. The feeling's completely mutual. I appreciate that.
All
Thanks
right.
so
Well,
much.
thank you, Crystal. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you next time. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Straight Up with Steph and being interested in living better. What many listeners do is subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episodes of the show. Remember, you are the best person to take care of you, and by learning what we talk about on this show, you're taking one more step to being a healthier and happier you. I'll talk to you soon.